responsibility of what you have to look forward to. The AD work is not an easy job, but it's an incredibly rewarding job. And you are really responsible for creating the environment for kids and coaches that will create lifetime memories. And that happens with a lot of hard work and a lot of really hard decisions. Who you hire, how you manage them, where you let kids go play. And those things, kids, you think back and personally reflect on that. Although your experiences that make you interested in this job from the time you were in high school to now, somebody made that happen in some way, shape, or form. And you now have the ability to do that for tens of thousands of kids over the course of your career. So it's an awesome responsibility. So please take that to heart. The second thing is I just really want to reiterate, not knowing where people are coming from, is in the school system, we are education-based athletics, which is very different from the club athletics. Not that competition isn't important. Heck, a lot of you are still coaching, right? I know my friend down here, Christian, he's still coaching. He's getting ready to win some football games, right? So we want to win. There's a scoreboard. We work really hard here trying to capture those scores and put them out there for people to see. So it's not that we're all about, just singing songs and having fun, but we also are education-based, which means we are geared. Our job is to keep kids connected to their education, right? In the classroom. That's first and foremost what we're responsible for. That's why the legislators have us in their law. That's why the schools fund us, right? The second piece is we have the opportunity to do extended education through our activities. And you're going to see some information, maybe you already got it. I apologize, I haven't kept up with all the training, but like inside out coaching. So BJ's leading that for us as well with Joe Ehrman and his team, Jody Redmond. And we're going to bring that to our schools at no cost for the early adopters, right? So a way to get deeper into coaches' pedagogy, essentially, why that happens. So you'll be getting more information, right? The reason that happens is we are education-based, not just club. We're not going to charge people for extra private lessons and all those things that happen. And we're going to take care of every kid, right? Every kid that wants to do it, we're going to find a place, whether it's if they have no talent like me, they can be the manager, they can be the statistician. If they're incredibly talented, we're going to highlight them. We're going to help her get to her goals that she has, right? So again, you create the culture, you create the opportunities, and we take care of everybody and we teach them, right? We're an extension of teaching. And then the last thing that makes this all happen is that the whole foundation of this in the state of Washington is your personal integrity, right? We are a self-governing body. When people are going to mess up, coaches are going to be a little too aggressive, right? Kids are going to make mistakes. It's an emotional thing, right? But that's our opportunity to teach. We have to hold people accountable, and we're working really, really hard to do that in a fair way. You're going to get put in some really tough spots. You're going to be managing coaches that were maybe co-coaches with you, maybe your friends. You're going to have kids, in the schools that are personal relationships. You're going to have school board members that are going to be very powerful, or you're going to have other ADs in your leg that are going to want to dominate. And you're going to be in a tough spot at times. Call us and let us help you. Not that we have all the answers, but you can blame us for having to do the right thing, right? So that is our role. We'll take the heat. They're not in our office on a regular basis. We get emails, phone calls all the time like that. You have people at your desk in the hallway confronting you on the sidelines. That's what I love about this job. I don't have that anymore, right? I get the luxury of space and grace. So let us help you. So when you get in a situation, trust your gut. If it doesn't feel right, let us help you with that. We'll help interpret the rules. Heck, a lot of times we get questions that force us to reevaluate what we're doing. We want that. We encourage that. So we're here to serve you, just like you're there to serve your communities. Use us up. But again, don't make any decisions under pressure that you're going to regret and are going to bother you in your heart and your soul because you're worried about winning one more basketball game, one more volleyball match, or et cetera. It is not worth it. And everybody who knows about that, and you may think you can keep that tight, you're going to teach them the wrong lesson in that situation. And it is not easy. I'll be the first one to tell you that. It is not easy. But we're here to help with that. So again, welcome. The AD job of all my jobs I ever had was my absolute favorite job, other than maybe being a middle school principal, because that was easy. But the AD job is my favorite, hardest job I ever had. So welcome to the profession, and thanks for being here with us.
Thanks, Mick. Does anybody have any questions specifically for Mick on what he shared? If not, we'll kind of move on to the next, and you'll definitely have opportunities at the end. Okay. Cindy, are you up for giving them a brief rundown of what you do and a couple of tidbits you'd like to share?
Bet. This is Cindy Adsit. I'm another one of the assistant directors here at the association. And since Mick has been on board, we've kind of revised our titles a little bit. So mine is Assistant Executive Director Compliance, which means if you have any issues, questions, concerns about anything in the handbook, I can certainly help you with that. Except eligibility. If you have any questions about Article 18 eligibility or 19 appeals, you go to BJ or you go to Justin. But the questions that typically come my way, and then I also share this responsibility with Andy Barnes, because I'm sure he's going to come on here next, is dealing with out of season questions that your coaches and or communities might have. If your coach comes to you and say, hey, I'd like to be able to do this with these kids, if you're not sure, run that by us and we can help you walk through that. So I tend to focus really on out of season and practice regulations in the handbook itself. Right now, there are a lot of cheer and dance drill coaches who are trying to renew their stunt certification. During the pandemic, we did not offer clinics and a lot of teams did not stunt. So those have expired. Those are listed both in my WIAA under resources for you. They're also on our forward facing page under resources. So if your cheer or dance coach needs any help with that, they can contact me with that. I also oversee the sanctioning of interstate and international contests. So if your school is invited to play a game or participate in a tournament in any sport in another state, you can check with me to make sure that all that process has been done correctly. There's really nothing that we require of you unless you are hosting an event that involves teams from at least 5 states. And honestly, that's not real common here, but it could be. So those are just the basic things. I oversee volleyball, cheerleading, gymnastics, dance drill, and baseball.
Thanks, Cindy. I'm going to hand it off to Andy if he has anything he'd like to share from his wheelhouse.
Yeah, thanks, BJ. I'm one of the assistant directors in the office in charge of operations. I've been around for entering my 16th year. Oversee the sports of swimming and diving, golf, basketball, tennis, and football. I work with our allocations and our classifications. And I want to speak to those specifically, as well as our rules clinics. So I'm going to briefly share my screen so that I can show you just something on the website real quickly. For this upcoming year, we will be entering into what would have been the second year of our allocation.
Hey, Andy, we're looking at your beautiful kids, just so you know.
Well, maybe I'll do this. How about that? Is that working?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So this would be the second year of a 2-year allocation cycle, but because of COVID and everything going on, we are going to be utilizing a 1-year allocation cycle. And that, when I say allocations, that is the state allocations, which you will be hit up a lot by your coaches and your community to find out exactly what that looks like for you. So our process is to go through that each one of the seasons. We have pre-approved the 1A through 4A team allocations, and in the fall we will go through our process of counting for each one of the classifications, 1B, 2B, and we will verify all the 1A through 4As as well as doing the individual sports. So your district director in your league and your league president will probably reach out to you probably here in a couple weeks to start gathering that information. So if you have any questions on that process, we are going to go through it in depth at the fall workshops. I'm not going to go through it today, but I just wanted to show you where that's at in case you're getting those questions. So on the website under the tournaments tab, the allocations and draw criteria, we can probably direct you to there. This is where everything will be posted. Right now, there's nothing up there because we don't have any allocations. But this will be continually updated as we go throughout the year. It'll be listed by classification, by each one of the districts, and then by each one of the sports. And at the very bottom of that tab, you can toggle between each one of the seasons. And this will also have the rep assembly allocation. So this is where you can find out how many voters within your district will be voting for rep assembly. So again, we'll go through that process here starting in the fall. We will get all the fall approved. Then we will do the winter process and then the spring process. And then next year we will do it as well. And then that will start the new 2-year allocation cycle. So allocations.
Andy, can you explain to them why we do 2 years and what's the significance of that?
Yeah, and so the allocation cycle is based off of 2 years. The classification cycle is a 4-year cycle, but when we went to the 4-year classification cycle, we felt it was better to keep allocations on a 2-year cycle so that there wasn't such a long stretch. The numbers do change. We will do counts in the first year that will cover the 2 years, but we will not make any changes to the second year if a school drops or adds a sport. We will only do the count in the first year. But we felt that it was best to do a 2-year cycle so it wasn't stretched over 4 years. But that's the kind of the reasoning for 2 years on that. So again, we will do it this year, and then we will do it again next year for a new 2-year allocation cycle, which will complete the 4-year classification cycle. So speaking of classifications, you can find out where your school's classification is under the About tab under classifications. Each one of the member schools is listed here with their numbers, what their adjusted classification number is. We are entering into the second and third year of the classification cycle. We will have some appeals this fall from schools that originally appealed their classification, and then we will finish out our 2 years of the 2020-24 classification cycle. So everything is listed here on this from 1Bs all the way down. You'll see some schools that are listed with some color coding on there. Those are schools that have had their classification changed due to an appeal or their free and reduced lunch count. So if you have any questions on where your school is or what that process is, that's located there on the website as well. The last thing that I wanted to touch on is we're getting a lot of questions about rules clinics. Those are set to be launched here on Thursday. So your coaches will have access to them. They can get that through their My WIAA account. If they are not showing up, you just need to make sure as an AD that each one of your coaches is selected as the coach for that sport, and then they should have access to take those rules clinics. So all of the fall sports clinics will be launched, as well as the concussion clinic, the sudden cardiac, and the WIAA general rules clinics. So your coaches will have the first 3 weeks of the season to complete that. We try to get them up in advance of the season so they have plenty of time to go through the rules prior to practices starting. So if they want to take them early, that's great, but they just have to have it completed by the end of the 3rd week of the season. And it's up to ADs to monitor that. So if you have a coach who has not completed their clinic by the end of the 3rd week of the season, that is a violation. So make sure that all your coaches are in compliance with getting those rules clinics. If you've got any questions on that, you can reach out to me. Part of the rules clinics, obviously, they will, all of the NFHS new rules for each one of the sports will be highlighted in there. We'll talk about some state tournament stuff. There's some points of emphasis with heat. So if you have your kids that are starting practice here in August, and we're seeing that the weather's starting to ramp up. So we have some resources in those clinics. We will also be sending out the hard copy of the rule books here in the next couple of weeks. So you'll be receiving a packet from the office that will have all of the rules books for your fall and most of the winter sports. And then we will send out another release in January that will have your spring sports rules books. So any questions on anything that I've covered so far?
Andy, will you share what sports you oversee?
Yeah, so I oversee basketball, football, golf, swimming and diving, tennis. And then I back up for other sports, but I am the primary contact for those sports. If you have coaches that have questions, or if you have questions on any one of those sports specifically, feel free to reach out to me.
Great, thanks. I'll cover a little bit from my wheelhouse. So just as a reminder, so Nick's our executive director, and then there's 4 assistants. You've met Cindy, you've met Andy and myself, and then Justin. Justin hasn't been able to join us yet today, but hopefully he'll be able to join us before this is over. So my sports are soccer, both boys and girls, softball, both slow pitch and fast pitch, and bowling. My other main responsibilities, which we talked about last week, was eligibility. I'm also do a lot of work with our membership. So kind of this work that we're doing right now to kind of help onboard and keep our membership database up to date and those kind of things. So I also oversee coaches education. So I kind of did the work with coaches school and get that up and running and help you with that. So that's what my wheelhouse is. I don't have a lot that I'm going to add, but I do want to show you a couple things based on some questions that we have received lately. So I'm going to also share my screen and show you a couple of things. Let me log over to here. Okay, so hopefully you can see WIAA.com. And just a reminder, when you click on the My WIAA, that's what takes you over to your AD portion of that. And I just want to remind, there's been a few of you that have said, how do I contact other schools? How do I find out like what leagues I could play in and those kind of things? So just a reminder on the WIAA part, you could see the districts and leagues. And when you go here, you'll be able to see the league alignments. So if you're really new at this, you could look and say, hey, my school's over here in District 7. So maybe I should try to find schools in District 6, District 9, or District 8 to play. So I wonder if District 6 or 8 or 9 have schools in my classification. So you can come down here and you could look and say, yeah, I'm a 2B school, and look at all these schools that are also 2B schools. And then if you really wanted to reach out to somebody in that group, you could also go to this member school directory. So if you decided that you really wanted to, have a conversation with somebody at Wenatchee, you could search, and then you can see which schools. Here's a middle school, here's a high school. Maybe I really want to talk to the AD at Wenatchee about playing a contest. You could click here and you could see the email and the phone number. And then here's the coaches. Keep in mind, right now we are asking every member school to update their directory. So if you don't do this, your information will not be accurate. If you do this, your information will be accurate. So that's going to be a huge push. We wanted everybody to have this done before August 10th. We also recognize that maybe not everybody's done. So we're going to push hard for everybody to have this done by the end of the month. So I just want you to know that's one way. And then those other things that Andy had talked about, sort of classifications where people fit. So this is another way for you to look for other schools in your classification. So those tools are there for you if you need them. So I wanted you to know that. All of us have shared with you what our responsibilities are. And I just want to show you right here under the contact button. You could click that button because you have a question about cheerleading, and you could come here and you could look and say, look, cheerleading, Cindy's the lead. I need to email Cindy. Maybe you'll have a question about football and you can't remember who it is. You can go to football and see that it's Andy, and you could send him an email. Handbook interpretations, as Cindy had mentioned just recently. So if you have a question, we want to help you, but we really want you to try to help yourself first. It's going to help you be a stronger and more confident AD. So we really want to encourage you, if you have a question, the first thing that we really encourage you to do is go to the handbook, open up the handbook, and then I think I showed you this already. If you do the Control F, you could put in a search for cheerleading, cheer, And you can see there's 54 places where cheer is mentioned. So you can toggle through and try to get your questions answered. And remember, this will take you all the way to the Q&A in the back. And the Q&A is very, very helpful. So once you've gone to the handbook and tried to solve your problem, then you realize I can't answer my question. You can go over here to the contact list, find who's responsible for cheer, and then send an email. So it's just a way for you to be able to navigate and find the information that you need to find. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing and come back to the conversation. So Cameron, the question, where do we go to update that information? Too bad I just stopped sharing. Let me share again really quick. I can do that fast. Share my screen. Let me get right back to where we just were. When you go to My School, if you come all the way to the bottom to update membership information, this is going to walk you all the way through the process we would like you to take. So you just hit continue, and this could take you up to 30 minutes. We're going to ask you to update every sport that you offer. So obviously you might not be thinking about winter or spring. Do the best that you can, and then we will send you a reminder right before winter and right before spring to get in there and update those. The other thing you can do it is sort of one by one by one. This is also, you can see verify my pass gate. This is another place that you can, you'll end up having to go. But this also manage coaching standards. A few people have asked about that. You can go here, you can see all of your coaches. Are they, for this year, are they compliant? Are they not compliant? All those kind of things. So that's a really good place to be managing all of that. So
I don't have that tab on mine. I don't
so
have
Cameron, I'm assuming you're logging in as a coach, potentially, not logging in as an AD. Is that possible?
not sure. I don't
Yeah.
think so. That might be, but
Let me, while we're continuing to ask and answer questions, I will pull up your account and take a peek at it.
okay, thanks.
Okay. Philip asked a question. We are two schools combining to form one team. I think what you're going to find is when you log in, you're going to go to East Jefferson, and you guys will just do that together. All of your coaches for East Jefferson are all going to be listed. So, and if somebody else hasn't seen that page, that just tells me that maybe you're not logging in as an AD. So I would maybe send me an email and say, hey, I'm having some troubles with that, and I will see if we can solve it for you. At this point, I'm going to introduce Todd Stordahl. He's with the Washington Officials Association, which is separate from the WIAA, although he does live in our office with us. So Todd, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about WOA and a few things that these ADs need to know.
All right, thanks, BJ. And thanks everybody for showing up. I know everyone's just chomping at the bit to get going. I know we are. So just BJ wanted me to run over the new billing process, and it's a new process for everybody. And so as a new AD, you're coming in and it's the same for you as it is for someone who's been there 20 years, because we changed the process last year. And so the goal of the program is to get officials paid sooner, which will hopefully lead to more officials more people wanting to officiate, and hopefully target younger officials now that they can be paid 48 hours after the game rather than 3 months after the game they work. And so in order to do that, we created a WIAA co-op agreement, which has a membership fee, and that's the invoice. If you've seen an invoice already for this coming year, that's what that invoice is. It's due prior to your first contest. So if you haven't seen an invoice yet, it's because I sent it to the previous AD. So please send me an email or send BJ an email. She can forward it to me, or BJ, if you want to throw my email in the chat. I really can't multitask. So if you haven't seen an invoice, let's make sure you get that so you don't fall behind right off the bat. And then what will happen is at the end of your season, we'll send you another invoice. It'll be an end of season reconciliation, which will itemize out the dates of the games, the level of the games, the amount for the officials, the amount for travel. And then your membership fee is put onto that invoice as a credit. And so if your charges are more than the membership fee, you'll be invoiced for the difference. If it's less, you'll have a credit on your account that you can forward to the next season. And then at the end of the school year, if you still have a credit on your account, you can either forward it to 22-23 season, which a lot of schools are opting to do, or we can issue you a refund check. And so that's sort of the way the process is working. And it's new, so we're all learning and changing as we go to make sure it works for everybody. So that's the gist of it.
Thanks, Todd. So keep in mind, all of your scores will be in Arbiter. And what should they be doing just to confirm, Todd, if they, how do they make sure they have an official for a game?
Yeah, so the key is in Arbiter game, hopefully you guys have been attending some of those sessions. If not, they're on demand on the my WIAA website. But the key is make sure you set your teams up correctly. That's the number one issue that we run into with the scheduling. So make sure you go through those steps. Takes a few minutes to make sure all your teams are set up right with the right default site, the right officials association, the right level. And then once you have that done, you put your schedule in, and then on your schedule screen on Arbiter game, there's a column for officials with the officials uniform. And so it's, it's right there on the screen. If it's red, it means there's no officials that you made it so the schools are, that you're doing your own officiating. So you don't want that. If it's yellow, it means that you've requested officials and they haven't assigned officials to the contest yet. And if it's green, that means officials have been assigned and accepted. So green means you're good to go that day. So if you come up onto game day, you go in the morning, check your schedule, make sure everything's still on track with everything, and there's a yellow jersey, you definitely want to reach out to that assigner and find out what's going on. But if it's green, you're good. Red, it means it was input wrong. Yellow is make sure you give a call to your assigner.
Mike, the best way I could answer that is because none of us are in a school with active games, I would suggest you watch some of those on demands or make sure, I don't know if there's any more Arbiter trainings, but I'd make sure you go to one of those and or watch the on demand. The other option is hopefully you guys soon will get to meet other ADs in your league. So find the people that can sort of help you navigate some things as well. So that would be a really good idea.
So BJ, is that a demo of just that screen or the whole program?
Not sure, Mike, what were you looking for?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I was just, you were just kind of walking through what it would look like on your end. I just was requesting to see like a demo. It was just kind of hard to follow. That's all.
Yeah, I can share if it's okay, BJ.
Yeah, you bet. Go for it.
So I can just share what that screen looks like for anything like how to use Arbiter game. You definitely want to use one of those on-demand videos or context one, but I can show you what it. So this would be a schedule. This is all of the future games, but you could go to a specific week. And it's this call. So the first column here with the looks like a piece of paper. That's contract accepted. That means that both schools have accepted the game. And then right next to it is this yellow jersey. And obviously, since it's 3 weeks out, officials haven't been assigned yet. But this shows that they've requested officials from the correct association. And then as they fill in the names, you'll see the names and whether they've accepted the game. This yellow will turn green once all 5 officials have accepted.
Thanks, Todd.
And so I would get used to looking at that like every Monday or something, just to make sure that what you thought you put in is what it is, and that the assigners are being able to fulfill those requests.
Todd, we had a good question. At what point, and how many days ahead of time should they start getting nervous if there aren't officials assigned?
It's going to be different for different areas. So, if you go in on a Monday and you don't have officials for that week, I would reach out to the assigners just to see what's going on. But most assigners are pretty proactive in letting you know, this Friday's, we have too many football games. We need someone to move. They're not in the habit or the business of not having people show up. And so if it gets, a couple days before that game, you may want to reach out just to understand how that assigner works. But in most cases, we're trying to assign 2 weeks ahead of time to give everybody, give officials proper notice in schools. But with the shortage this past year and the shortage we expect to have this year, that may not be the case. So you may just want to reach out, find out how they're working things and go from there. But each area has a different assigner, so they all work differently.
Thanks, Todd.
Yep.
Any other questions specifically for Todd around officials while we have him here? Don't feel like you can't ask him a little later if something comes up. Just to help, two of you said that you weren't able to see that screen. I want to make sure each one of you should have filled out. There's this resources, forms, new AD registration. So if you shifted from being a coach to an AD and you haven't filled this out, you're not in the system as an AD for your school. So that would have impacted, Cameron, your ability to see my school, because our system probably thinks you're a coach, so you can't see that. If anybody else is in the same boat, you need to make sure that you go to resources, forms, new AD registration. You also do that if you switch schools. So if you used to be an AD at a different school and now you've switched, this is what triggers us to make that happen for you. Okay. If you did it already, maybe just send me an email. We'll dive in. I just did a search for you in our system and you're not listed as an AD, so we can work on that offline. I saw that my buddy Justin Kesterson jumped on. JK, are you in a spot to be able to talk a little bit? I can share screen for you if you need me to.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate it. So if we just stay in my WIAA, well, first off, good morning, everybody. Once again, thanks for being here. So one of the things that I oversee are ejections and violations. I get to oversee a lot of the fun stuff that ADs get to do. And so one of the things that I wanted to do today on the presentation is just to kind of walk you through where to find that information, because inevitably you'll have an ejection at some point. It's just something that's inevitable as an AD, and at some point you'll have a violation, whether it's a small one or a large one. That depends. But I've submitted them myself, both of them. I'm sure BJ has submitted one or two in her career along the way, and so it's never something that you want to do and have to do, but it is part of the job. And I think that I know Mick was going to touch on this in his opening, which was just the integrity of the job. And this is one of the things that as an AD that, we want to follow the rules and have members follow the rules and make the association better and stronger by doing that. And this is part of it. And it can be tough. And, you get a lot of pressure from your coaches and your communities in a lot of situations, but these are those things that have to be taken care of, and violations are certainly one of those, along with the ejection report. So the way the ejection reports will work is you really need to establish, first and foremost, a relationship with your coaches to have an understanding that, anytime there's an ejection, you should be notified, whether that's via email, via text, via phone call that night. First thing the next morning, whatever you want to establish with your coaches, the sooner the better. and especially if it's them that has been ejected, because coaches' ejections work just a little bit differently. And we'll revamp the form this year so that you're only doing the fill out once. And so getting that reported. So right now the language is that it has to be reported within one school business day. And so a lot of ADs have a misconception that they have to wait on the officials report to know what happens. So this is where that relationship with your coaches comes in, comes to the forefront and comes in handy, is that they should be able to tell you exactly what happened. There should never be a situation where you find yourself not knowing why the ejection took place. The officials are gonna, notify or should be notifying your coach as to what the ejection was for and why at that point. And then what will happen is at some point, whether it's that the officials are supposed to fill theirs in within 24 hours as well. And so some ADs think that they're supposed to wait until that that officials report has been sent in, and that is not completely accurate, because you're supposed to fill out what it is your coaches have told you the ejection was for. So really try to get your coaches to give you that information first, so that you're not waiting around on an officials report to find out what happened and get caught off guard. And this is really a big thing at your JV and your C team levels, because a lot of times ejections occur there and ADs don't find out about it until 2-3 days later from their coaches that took place. Or I reach out to them and say, hey, you haven't filled this ejection report out. So those are just kind of some norms that you'll want to establish with that. And so, BJ, if you want to go down onto the quick links in your My WIAA account on the left-hand side, in that quick link section, there's a submit an injection report. And so that link will take you into a Google form document that we've set up. And then what you'll do is you'll fill out all of that information. And there's a couple of rules that are set in there as presets that you can select, whether it's a contest rule, which is just the standard, game ejection for something that took place during the game. And then there are a couple other ones that pop up there, but the other main one is the ejection that'll have you set out for 20% of your contest. And most of those deal with fighting that has taken place within the contest. And so if there were punches, kicks, any type of a strike will get you those additional games in that. And so there are specific rules for each sport as to what constitutes that violation. And so you'll select that. And so I'll make sure typically that I work with the AD at least when those kind of ejections come up, just to make sure that people understand that that's a 20-game suspension, and let them know if it's been
20%, JK, 20%.
Yeah, 20%. Yep, sorry, 20% violate or 20% suspension for that sport if I've seen that it's mislabeled. Because once these get filled out, they all come back to me, and then I work with Todd and Carrie at the WIAA on those ejections. And then if there's appeals that come through, and we'll talk about those in just a few seconds. But that form again is going to be in your My WIAA accounts. And then in the quick links on the left-hand side is the submit ejection report. So that's where that'll go. And then just to talk through the appeal process really quick. When you want to appeal an ejection, if it is a misapplication of the rule, you'll contact myself, and then we'll work through the appeal process with whoever the contact is for that sport. And we'll look in to see if there's actually a misapplication of the rule. If you're going to appeal and it's based on video evidence, and video evidence can only be to overturn a specific judgment call by the official, that video has to be submitted by you as the school representative. We won't take them in from your families if they're going to send us emails and stuff. We don't. That's not how it works. So the appeal has to come directly from you or your principals. We won't take appeals from the coaches either. It has to come from you as an administrator for your building. And then the video gets sent in to me. And then again, I work through that process with the sport contact in our office, and then with the officials association if we need to. And that is simply just an email exchange back and forth. So there's no formal appeal form that we have set up, just because of how nuanced it can be and different for each situation that can occur. Now there's going to be times, and as new ADs, I'll tell you this, that your coaches are going to say that they're, we've got video, and when you look at it, you should review it first to see if you believe that it's even a legitimate appeal. Sometimes we get sent in videos and, oh, my kid didn't throw a punch. Okay, so then we look at it, and it's clearly a punch, and they're just doing it to appease the family or doing it to appease the coach. And those can be tough conversations, and we're here to help. And so we can, I'll still take a look at it, but don't try not to send in the bogus stuff that's easily over, can be easily upheld. And any type of fighting motion is typically going to be upheld if it's pretty clear. And so if there's any instance of where you look at the film and you say, okay, this is borderline, most likely it's going to be upheld. And so that's kind of how the ejection reports work. And then the violation form is also there on your quick links on the left-hand side. So if you go to the submit WIAA violation report, the form is going to look similar to the ejections it's done through Google. And so this is the self-report violation form. So you go down through, you fill out information, and we'll just use fall workshops since they're coming up. So if you are unable to attend or forget to attend the fall workshop, this is where you would go to submit this violation report that you didn't attend the fall workshop for your school, and the school didn't send a representative, and it just asks for specific information. And what this does is this gets sent out to your league president and various other people, so that your leagues are made aware that there's a violation that has occurred. And then your leagues typically work through that process, and that it gets sent to us as well, just so that we've been notified that there is a violation that has occurred, and our district directors are also updated on there.
So Justin, can I go back for just a second and ask you a question?
Yeah.
So let's say it's the first week of girls soccer and you have an athlete that gets ejected, and your coach insists that was absolutely bogus. The official screwed it up. Your kid didn't deserve to be ejected, and the coach is super mad about it. What's the AD's responsibility?
Yeah, so I think that the responsibility there for the AD is just to work through with coach, have them explain to you. If you're not familiar with the rules of soccer, figure out what it is that they are wanting to appeal, and have that conversation with the coach, and then work through the rule book, figure out which rule was misapplied, or if it's a judgment call, and there's video evidence for that judgment call, then if there's video of it, then you can have that discussion and go through it to say, okay, this is what we're looking at. So when you send that in, an appeal in to our office, and specifically to myself, you're going to need to list out, okay, this is the rule that was misapplied, or here's the point in the video when the infraction occurred, and this is why we believe that it isn't whatever the referee has said or the official has said took place. Again, typically most of the appeals that come through via video are due to for football are going to be head-to-head contact, spearing, and then typically fighting in most other sports. Typically for other sports, we don't see many other appeals that are outside of violent conduct, which is what the 20% rule is around, is violent conduct for each sport. And there's a form on our website that lists out exactly what the violent conduct forms are. And I'll go through that, or the violent conduct rules are for each of the sports. And I'll go through that at fall workshop. And so all of you will get a double dose of this, because I'll cover this in fall workshop a little bit more in detail when I do my breakout. But yeah, that's typically the process that goes through.
Justin, should they wait for the official to put in their ejection report just so they can counteract what the official says?
Right. No, exactly. And that's kind of what I was pointing out earlier, is you should not wait for the official. And there's always going to be discrepancies between what the school lists and what the official lists. And you have to remember that officials are not putting this in until the game is over. And so if something happens let's just say for football, something happens in the first quarter of the game, you're expecting an official to have instant recall after they've conducted 3 more quarters, a halftime procedure, post-game procedures, and get back into the locker room and change, and then go home at night, or do it on their phone as soon as the game's over and recall exactly what happened verbatim in the first quarter of a game. And there's not very many people that can do that to my knowledge. And so the expectation is that when the officials put this in, it's going to be fairly accurate, but it may not be verbatim of exactly what happened step by step. And so there's going to be discrepancies there. But that's for that to be sorted out. If there's an appeal, then we work through that process that's why we work with both the school and the officials association. So no, to answer BJ's question, you should not wait on the officials report. That's why I'm saying that the relationship between you and your coaches is vital, because you shouldn't be finding out from an email from me that, hey, you haven't sent in this ejection report, for 3 days. Where is it? You should know exactly from your JV coaches, all the way from your C team coaches up to your varsity coaches. Whether, like I said, whether that's an email that night, whether it's a text message or a phone call that night, that's up to you on how you're going to make that a standard procedure. But you should not have to wait until the officials report comes in to get the trigger that, you've had an ejection at your game the night before.
Great, thank you. Somebody asked what some common violations are. And Cindy and Andy might be able to chime in, but I would say some common ones are you played an ineligible player. That would be a common violation. Potentially you schedule one too many matches for a volleyball team, and you have to self-report that you played too many matches. Cindy or Andy, some other things. I mean, realistically, if your coaches don't do the rules clinic, you would want to self-report that they didn't complete their obligations. If you didn't attend the fall workshop, you would need to self-report that you didn't attend the fall workshop. Andy or Cindy, some other ideas?
Out of season coaching violations where your coaches are doing things they should not be doing.
Physical forms is a big one. A kid hasn't been fully cleared and they show up on the practice field. When you're doing your walk arounds at practice, it's the kid that's out there and they haven't been put on the clear to participate list or cleared to compete list. Both of those are some typical violations that you would want to report. And I'm looking through the chat here, BJ. So those, the process is just what we walk through is that is submitting that violation report. And then in the handbook, there are certain levels for violations and kind of what the recommended penalties are for that. And so that's part of the process that you'll work through when you do. You'll have to supply a suggested school penalty when you do the self-report. And so when you go to your next league meeting after that, typically your league is going to discuss the violation and discuss the penalty and either say, okay, we'll take the school recommendation for the penalty, whether that's, probation for the coach or probation for the athletic director or the athletic department as a whole. Then they discuss that and then they will submit that to your WIAA district director to have on file, which again gets sent back into us. And so there's just varying levels of what violations have occurred and where they fall within that penalty chart for what you would want to put in there. And then to go to, I think Cindy answered this question already, but just to put it out there to the general group that are there suspensions for non-violent conduct ejections? Yes. Most ejections are going to be a 1-game suspension for the next contest. And if you have, I think this is a good thing to know too, if you have a JV player that gets ejected on Monday night and let's just say they're a swing player where they go up from JV to varsity, they cannot, wherever they get ejected, whatever level of play they get ejected in, they cannot play in a contest in that sport until they have served the suspension at that level. So if you have a kid that's ejected on Monday night and he's a swing player and so is supposed to play on Friday, he has to sit out the varsity game on Friday night. And then he also has to sit out the next game on the following Monday at the JV level. So until he has served that suspension at that level, he can't play in that varsity contest. And I think that's an important one to understand, is that the penalty carries from that sport and that level through those games. And then if you have a student athlete, let's say, that gets ejected then in the last game of the season, but they're let's just say a basketball player, using the football example, then they will serve that suspension in the first 2 games of a basketball season, typically, or the first game of a basketball season, depending on what that looks like. If it's violent conduct and it's 20%, then they would serve out a 4-game suspension during basketball season. So again, if you have questions on ejections when you have them, feel free to get a hold of me. I'm definitely available, and I'll be there to support you and help you through that process. So don't be afraid to reach out and have questions.
Thanks, JK. Andy Barnes was going to share something that we think is important that we just thought about. So Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, I know we're throwing a ton at you, but I think one of the most important things is outside of the WIAA office, just processes and points of contact that you're going to want to understand how things work. So obviously, the member schools are part of the association, and they're the rules making body of the association. The state office, us here, we don't make any of the rules. We just interpret them for the membership. So each one of the member schools is part of a league. You're going to obviously want to know who's part of your league, and then the members of that. You will have a representative from that league that is considered the league president. They probably will be connected to your district board, and then the WIAA executive board. So the WIAA executive board is the policy making board of the association. They set the state tournament sites, the length of the seasons. And these people are very important to find out who they are, because they're the voice for the association as you're dealing with things. And then we also have the representative assembly. That's the rules making body. They determine every year, they meet each spring to talk about amendments. And so you'll probably start hearing what is an amendment, what does that look like, the process, the timelines of that. So on the website, all of these points of contact are listed. The executive board minutes are posted there. We send them out. So decisions that are made, we have an executive board meeting tomorrow. There will be some decisions made that you'll want to keep up on. They're going to approve the handbook for this upcoming school year. So we have a few minor edits. Right now, we don't have this upcoming school year's posted, but we will after the meeting tomorrow. So just make sure that you understand who those people are. There's plenty of resources within your league. Don't be afraid to reach out. You're going to have a ton of questions. I mean, even us in the office, we still have questions that we need to reach out to people. So feel free to connect with those people. There's tons of people within your league that have a lot of experience to help you get through these first couple months of your first school year. So we don't want to let anybody fall behind on this. And we know we're throwing a ton of information at you. So we're just trying to make sure that you can keep your head above water for at least the next couple months.
Great. Thanks, Andy. And one of the things to kind of piggyback on Andy, this is a membership organization. So we have about 400 high schools that are members of the WIAA. As a member, you can only compete against other members. In the high school level, basically all the high schools in Washington are practically members. So that's not as big of an issue. In the middle school, not all middle schools are members of our association. So if you're overseeing some middle school sports, you have to keep in mind, as a member school, you can only play other member schools. And so if you have a middle school that says, hey, can we play you, a middle school from down the street, you can only play other members. So just keep that in mind. Not as big of an issue at the high school level, because most of our schools are members. So just keep that in mind as you're building schedules and those kind of things. Okay, somebody had asked about kind of new COVID guidance for the fall. We have not been given that yet either. We will not keep it from you. Once we get it, we will push it out as quickly as we can. I know everybody's a little anxious about that, but with fall workshops coming up in a week or so, that will definitely be a point of conversation. If you haven't signed up for fall workshops, make sure you do. I'm your point of contact if you're not sure how to do that or what to do. It is a handbook rule that you attend one of them. So make sure you attend one. Some emails will be going out pretty soon about kind of how to navigate that. So the sooner you get signed up, the better off. At this point, unless any of my coworkers have something they want to chime in, we're going to open it up for questions that you might have related to what we've talked about, or just anything random that's on your mind that you would like to talk about. Feel free to unmute yourself or throw it in the chat. We're here to answer whatever we can.
Hey, BJ, real quick, one additional thing, you're talking about games with other, as you're building out your schedule. If you're in a border area, or if you have at a school that typically will send teams out to other states, you also want to make sure that if you're competing against a team from another state, that they're also members of their association. So they have to be association members of their state association as well.
Yeah, good point, JK, thanks. We've covered a lot of information today. Any questions, don't be shy. This is a great opportunity to ask them. If you're having them, somebody else might.
Hello.
I might, go ahead.
I have several. Okay, so my first question is, we're listed as, I'm the new AD for Summit Atlas. We're a charter school in West Seattle. We're listed as 2B in District 2. And we're listed as an independent school. Not sure what that means. But we don't have a home gym. Like they don't have a they don't have a gym, indoor gym for basketball. And I was wondering if anybody else has experienced this, and how any advice on finding a home gym around my area.
I can just jump in quickly on that one, Mike, because I know there have been times when schools have either been under construction, or maybe they had a flood in the gym and they did not have a facility available for at least a certain period of time. It would be worthwhile for you to reach out to schools that do have facilities in your area to see if they can make time in their schedule that you could schedule your games. You might not have just one home gym, but you might be able to work that out. Or you should be able to find something there. It might even wind up being a recreation facility, and it might not be a school. Being an independent school means that you are not a member of a league. So your primary contact really in District 2, since you're not in a league, you don't have a league president to work with, would be your district director, Pat McCarthy. And he can help you with that. He's also make sure I get his title correct, the athletic supervisor assistant. He's in charge of athletics for Seattle Metro Schools. So he's got connections with a lot of schools in your area.
Okay.
Thanks, Cindy. Hey, Todd, can you answer this question for Amber? She took the arbiter training. She's been able to upload her league games and matches, but has a non-league game that needs to be added and cannot find the school on the list.
Yeah, so in the resource tab, you would just go to opponents. If they're in close proximity, just start typing their name and they'll pop up. If not, you have to change the mileage to 50 miles or 100 miles, and then they'll pop up, and then you can select them and add them as an opponent. So your account only has the schools that someone previously has added or that you'll add, rather than all 360 high schools.
Okay, thank you. I had one more question. When we verify coaches, I have all my coaches listed, and in terms of their clinics, it says no, 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 no. If they take a clinic, does WIAA just AA, does it just update the clinics that they took with you, and I need to get the other clinics that might have been taken with NFHS, or do I have to go in and get their certificates and verify each of those individually?
You're asking a good question. I don't know if I have the perfect answer. I don't know if Andy has an answer. I would, if you don't see them pop in automatically, you may have to update those on their own.
Okay, so then my next question is, if I have a coach, is there verification if they say we're the head football coach last year? Do they have to retake the clinic again this year? Or does it last for 2 years or 1 year or 3 years or?
The sport-specific rules must be taken every single year by that. And
Okay.
so the rules change. And so we update that on a yearly basis. There are some other certifications that are multiple years, but the rules clinics themselves, anything that's a WIAA clinic, if it's taken by a coach and they get a completion certificate, then it will show up in that coach's profile and you will be able to access that. And so make sure at the end of the third week of each one of the seasons, you need to go in and make sure your coaches have completed those. We try to send out a reminder email. So if I'm a coach and I got a couple days left, hey, make sure you get your clinics updated and taken so that it's not a violation. But anything that's taken outside of the WIA, if a coach goes and takes an FHS course, unfortunately, we're not able to bring that into our system, but they are able to take courses outside of that. But there is a minimum requirement that they do take the WIAA standards. And going back to kind of making sure your coaches are all set, make sure your coaches do have their certifications for their sport, because some sports require a little bit more certification, whether it's hands-on training. Make sure they have that before they're out there with kids on practice, because that's a huge liability concern. And you don't want to start off your year with a coach or somebody getting injured and they don't have the correct certifications. In the handbook, under the coaches tab is the requirements for every single coach, and then the sport specific requirements for coaches as well.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
And there's an appendix in the handbook towards the back that kind of shows you for every sport, kind of what they have to do and how frequent they have to do it.
I see Wendy had a question about the concussion and sudden cardiac. Yes, those clinics will also be launched on Thursday with all of the sport specific rules clinics.
And as an AD, you will have access to every one of them. And so you can go in there and take them. It's a great idea for you to take them. You're not required to take them. The only thing an AD is required to take is the AD eligibility clinic, but the rest are choice for you. It's not a bad idea for you to know what your coaches are learning on those. Christian, go ahead and ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. If we have an assistant coach that's kind of dragging their feet on doing these rules clinics or getting cleared, and we decide not to move forward with that coach, but we started the season with that coach listed, but that coach hasn't followed through, we decide not to move forward with that coach. After week 3, do we still need to file a violation report, or do we just take that coach off our coaches list and move forward that way?
My gut would say if they're not coaching for you, then you could remove them and put the new person on, but you're going to obviously want them to get the certifications up
Yes,
to
of
date
course. Mhm.
quickly and right away. And honestly, they shouldn't be coaching if they don't have all of that complete. That would be sort of a minimum requirement on our end. So that's how that should go.
I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome. I was asked a question about sort of accommodating kids with IEPs and 504s when it comes to eligibility. Just so you know, if you're thinking about something like, you know, a traditional student in your school has to take 6 classes and has to be passing 5 of 6. An IEP kid or a 504 kid would also have to be doing that. Now, obviously you can make some accommodations, or maybe they're more of a pass fail or some of those things. We've had questions in the past where if a student has a 504 and maybe the 504 allows them to have a half day of school because of maybe some anxiety in the mornings or something, let's say, if they come half day, that's fine. But if your kids are taking 6 periods, they have to be taking 6 periods. Like, so they don't get to have that kind of an accommodation. They still have to take the minimum requirements, and definitely with all the other kind of categories. We do have a rule that allows, if you have a student with an IEP that is using or is accessing like a life skills program, and so they're going to be in school till they're 21, you do have the ability to request they have an additional year to participate at the JV level. So sometimes you have those, you know, kids that are 20 and they're fairly low performers and they just want to play a little JV tennis. You can make a request for those kids to stay apart and connected to your program for an additional year. That's not for the varsity, but that would be for a sub-varsity, as long as they're not going to create a safety concern for other kids. So Wendy had asked a question about how to enter the individual coaches' clock hours for their 5 years. When you go into the coaches' hours when you're verifying your coaches, all you have to do is either say yes or no that they have met the 5 hours every 3 years. So you're going to have to come up with sort of your own way to track that, whether it's a spreadsheet or however you do that at your local level. All you need to do in our system is just say either yes or no, they meet that. We are working on a better way to track that, but right now we do not. Simply a yes or no. And the rest is sort of on your shoulders to manage. So coaches standards, I will share with you, it can be a little hard to manage because some things are 2 years and some years are 3 years and some things are every year. And so for that, I apologize. We are working on a better system. It's just not going to be this year. It will hopefully be next year. So that might be something that you come up with a way, a little bit paper, pencil, or spreadsheet or something to sort of give yourself some help on that. So I apologize that we're not, but we're working on that. Any other questions we can answer? Feel free. Or any that I missed in the chat along the way. Title IX reporting, you will do that directly with OSPI and whoever in your school district is the Title IX compliance officer. So you're going to do that directly with OSPI. Unless I'm incorrect, my coworkers will correct me. Okay, thanks. One of the things that you will do with us is participation numbers. So you will at certain points during the year be asked to report to us your participation numbers. So you're just be prepared for that. So you're keeping those nice eligibility lists with all the kids that are eligible, what team they're on, if they quit, if they stay in, if they finish the season, all those things, and you will give us a number of kids that participated in each sport along the way. Any other questions? Don't be shy. The next time you will see our staff is going to be at fall workshops. And so just make sure you're signed up for that. Plan on coming to that with, we're going to upload all of the handouts and things prior to fall workshop into the same portal where you signed up. So I'll be sending an email saying, hey, click this link and go here and do this and do that. So it would probably benefit you as a new AD to get in there and look at the handouts. They're not there yet, so don't go today. But for you to go up and look at all those things, so you have your head wrapped around it a little bit before we start talking about it. We're not going to give you a bunch of handouts at fall workshop, but everything's going to be posted. So depending on your learning style, you might find it easier to print some of them so you can take notes on them or ask questions. So just know that you're not going to be given everything at the workshop. It's all going to be posted. So heads up training online, I'll let Andy touch base on heads up training.
So we're getting lots of questions on the heads up training, and we know that we're kind of getting down to the wire. Football coaches do need a hands-on training. The waiver for the online training expired July 31st for last year because there was no hands-on being offered, but there is hands-on being offered, whether it's through USA. You can reach out to other school districts that have certified coaches that can train, and you can also contact Atavis. They are doing trainings as well. Reach out to me individually so I can find out what's going on potentially in your area. There are some schools that are having some clinics. I know in the Puget Sound region, there are a couple, but shoot me an email and I'll make sure that we get it. We want to make sure your coaches are certified.
Great, thank you. When it comes to new coaches workshops, you know, our coaches school is available on demand through August 21st. So if you have coaches that you just hired, but remember they have 3 years to get 5 hours. So if you have coaches that have been in your system for 3 years and have 0 coaching hours, you might hit the panic button and have them go to WIAA coaches school and and attend those courses because those are available on demand. If you just hired a coach last week, remember you have 3 years for them to get 5 hours. So depending on how you work as an AD, you can send coaches to coaches school each year. There's several schools that divide their coaching staff into thirds. So 1/3 of their coaching staff goes each year because if they go to coaches school, they're getting all the education that they need to meet the standards. Other ADs say, hey, I'm going to bring in my own person to do a risk management presentation. I'm bringing in my own person to do the medical compliance. I mean, you can do your own, but just depending on kind of how you want to operate and how you want to make that happen.
As a new AD, if we didn't inherit the old AD's organizational system to keep track of that, how are we going to know how many coaches we potentially have out of compliance, and are we self-reporting every single one?
Well, hopefully you can reach out to that AD and get that information. If you can't, there is a possibility that we can pull up our system from last year for you if they used it. Not everybody uses our system to track their information as well. So what I would do is I would just do your due diligence to see where you're at. If you find that you actually have people out of compliance intentionally, like they just really didn't do it, that would need to be a self-report. Otherwise, I would suggest maybe you touch base with your district director or your league president, or even reach out to me is okay and say, hey, this is what I've discovered. We have I don't have any documentation. And so we could talk about it. We could get in writing that you're going to start a 3-year cycle starting today. And, we can just talk through that and figure that out. We're not in the business of going out there and poking you and holding you accountable for things. You're expected, like Mick said at the very, very beginning, it's your integrity on the line, the way you take care of your school and the way you take care of your business. So that's my recommendation. And again, we are working on a system that's going to be a little more intuitive on that. So I'm hopeful about that. Any other questions that we can answer today? Feel free to. Okay. Again, we're here for you. If something pops up or you have a question, I'd recommend you check the WIAA handbook. If you can't solve your problem, go to the contact list, find out who to contact, reach out to us. We're happy to help. We will also be at fall workshops, so you can talk to us individually. We really look forward to meeting you in person, giving you a high five, a little fist bump, and getting you started on a good note.
I got one last question. I'm sorry.
Please, go ahead, Mike.
Brand new AD. Is there a checklist somewhere that I could follow just to make sure I have done everything I needed to do on my end?
My recommendation, Mike, is that when you log into your My WIAA, right on the center screen should be an AD calendar. It says AD WIAA calendar. I would either subscribe to it or I would be checking that on a weekly basis, because it'll have on there, for instance, tomorrow it says notification fall rule clinics open. So that's like triggering you, hey, I need to reach out to my coaches. If you look at Monday the 16th, it says reminder, ADs should sign up for the fall workshop and take the eligibility clinic. So that should be able to trigger you at least to make sure that you are following some WIAA rules. You can also find, if you go to the resources tab and go to AD resources, we have a monthly AD checklist. We have some sample things that you could look at. So those would be really good resources for you as well to download that monthly AD checklist. The other thing I'll share with you is your WIAA district. So Mike, you happen to be in District 2. District 2 has a mentor that you will meet through fall workshops, and that you will also have them as a resource that you could reach out to. The WIAA website, WSSAAA.com, their website also has an AD toolkit. And if you go into the toolkit, you'll find all kinds of things that you could beg, borrow, and steal from them as well. So those are your member school ADs that are sharing their tricks and trades in the toolkit.
Awesome. How do I get to that calendar? What tab?
You
is
have
that?
to log into your My WIAA.
Yeah, I'm here.
And it should be front and center. If you click the little WIAA logo in the top left-hand corner, you
Mhm.
should see my messages,
Ah, okay,
news and headlines, and just
see.
below that, you should see AD calendar.
perfect.
In the
Okay.
bottom right-hand corner of the calendar, there's a plus where you could actually subscribe to it onto your Google Calendar.
Awesome.
The
Thank
top
you.
right-hand side, you could click the agenda button and it'll actually print it like kind of a checklist as well, if you wanted it to.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, we're gonna let you all go. Have a fantastic Wednesday. And we will see you soon at fall workshops.